They didn't leave because you were kind. They left because you were too available. They didn't walk away because you were too kind. They walked away because you were too accessible, too available, too predictable. That's the brutal truth no one wants to hear. Because admitting that stings more than the silence they left behind. You didn't get abandoned because you lacked value. You got abandoned because you handed that value away without making them earn it. In the beginning, you thought consistency would make you desirable. You thought replying fast, showing up, always being there unconditionally would prove your worth. You believed love was a demonstration, constant, open, visible. But in a world shaped by psychological games and emotional strategy, what is easily seen becomes easily dismissed, and what is always reachable loses all sense of importance. You thought you were building trust, but what you were really building was predictability. And here's what they don't tell you. Predictability kills mystery, and mystery is the birthplace of respect. The moment someone knows they can have you whenever they want, they stop valuing the fact that you're there. The very thing you thought would bring them closer, your devotion, your emotional availability, actually pushed them away. Because in this world, people chase what moves away and disregard what's always in front of them. They didn't leave because they didn't care. They left because they thought you never would. That's the part that cuts deep. They felt secure in your presence, not because you made them feel loved, but because you never made them feel the possibility of your absence. And when someone is certain they'll never lose you, they stop putting in effort to keep you. Your availability told them, "You'll never lose me, no matter how you treat me." That wasn't loyalty. That was self-betrayal, dressed up as commitment. You were always there, always explaining, always justifying. You filled the silence. You chased after misunderstandings. You tried to heal things they never even admitted were broken. And in doing so, you taught them how to disrespect you, not through cruelty, but through indifference. Because when you give your presence away freely, you teach the world that your presence has no cost. Here's what no one teaches you. Your availability is currency, and you've been spending it on people who never invested in you. You gave your time like it was infinite. You gave your energy like it was cheap. And in the end, they didn't leave because you weren't enough. They left because you were always too much, too fast, too often. There was nothing left for them to wonder about, to work for, or to chase. People respect what they have to earn. People value what challenges them. And people only protect what they fear losing. You were never the problem. You were just too available to be respected. So now the lesson is simple but sharp. Make your attention expensive. Make your presence earned. Make your silence felt. Because in a Machiavellian world where perception is more powerful than reality, your constant presence doesn't bring love, it brings leverage. And if you don't learn how to say no, how to wait, how to disappear without notice, you'll keep finding yourself giving everything and getting nothing in return. Being kind isn't the mistake. Being predictable is. And the day you stop being available to everyone is the day they start realizing what they lost. Sincerity hurts in a world that rewards strategy. You were told that sincerity is strength, that if you love hard enough, give honestly enough, open your heart wide enough, you'll be valued, respected, chosen. But the truth is darker. In the real world, the Machiavellian world, sincerity is punished, not praised. It doesn't build loyalty, it builds entitlement. And the more honest you are with people who haven't earned that honesty, the more they'll use it against you. It's a bitter pill to swallow, isn't it? You opened up because you thought transparency would build connection. You believed vulnerability would earn empathy. But what you found was silence, distance, disrespect. Because while you were pouring your truth out, they were calculating how to position themselves above you. While you were hoping to be seen, they were deciding how much of you to keep or discard. And here's the part that cuts. They didn't reject you because you weren't real. They rejected you because you made it too easy to read you. See, in a world built on image noise and illusion, being sincere is like showing your entire hand before the game begins. It might feel noble, but to those who operate strategically, it's weak. It's leverage. It's fuel for manipulation. They don't care about how deeply you feel. They care about how useful your feelings are to their ego. This is why so many good men, so many honest souls get destroyed emotionally. Not because they were wrong, but because they were early. Too early with their love. Too early with their forgiveness. Too early with their truth. They offered their heart like a gift without asking if the other person even had the hands to carry it. You think it's beautiful to love without limits, but it's dangerous when that love isn't matched with awareness. Because when people can read you, they can control you. And when they can predict your emotional reactions, they no longer have to respect your presence. They simply respond to it when it's convenient and vanish when it's not. Here's the hard reality: being sincere too soon isn't emotional maturity, it's emotional exposure. And exposure without discernment invites exploitation. So what's the answer? Do you become cold, detached, empty? No. You become measured. You become calculated. You don't stop feeling, you start filtering. You don't stop being real. You start being strategic with your reality. You don't show your depth to people who haven't proven they can swim in it. Machiavelli never said don't feel. He said don't reveal unless it's a weapon. And in today's world, your sincerity is a weapon if used with precision. Not everyone deserves to hear your truth. Not everyone should be invited into your emotional world. Your honesty is not public property. It's a privilege, and privileges are earned, not assumed. So, from this moment on, you stop oversharing. You stop bleeding in public. You stop expecting people to value your heart just because you gave it freely. You make them work for access. You observe before you open. You calculate before you confess. You speak only when silence loses its power. Because sincerity without strategy is sacrifice. But sincerity with timing, control, and boundaries, that's power. And that's how you survive in a world that punishes truth, but bows to strength. Your power begins where your silence starts. In a world obsessed with attention volume and validation, silence is often mistaken for weakness. But the truth is, silence is a weapon, and not the kind that explodes loudly. No silence cuts deeper. It destabilizes. It unnerves. It creates questions where there used to be certainty. Because when you become unreadable, you become untouchable. Most people live loudly because they're afraid. Afraid of being misunderstood. Afraid of being forgotten. Afraid of not being seen. So they explain. They overtalk. They react. They perform. But the moment you stop doing all that, the moment you choose stillness over response, the room changes, because nothing is more terrifying than a man who doesn't flinch. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. A prince who reveals his every thought is not respected, he is predicted. And what can be predicted can be controlled. But when you say little, when you hold your ground without explanation, you force the world to adjust to you. People can't manipulate what they can't measure. They can't control what they can't read. You don't need to raise your voice. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to chase validation. When you master the art of restraint, your presence speaks for you. It commands more than words ever could. Because silence used properly doesn't indicate absence. It signals sovereignty, the kind of quiet power that unsettles everyone who once had access to your emotions. They used to know exactly how you'd react. Now they don't. They used to feel entitled to your time. Now they wait. They used to take your kindness for granted. Now they question what you're thinking. That's the shift. And it's not about being cold, it's about being measured. You're not shutting down your emotions. You're simply choosing when, where, and with whom they're revealed. You're not hiding. You're protecting. Not out of fear, but out of wisdom. Out of earned experience. Because here's what life teaches you the hard way. The more people know your buttons, the more they'll push them. The more they know your insecurities, the more they'll weaponize them. And the more you speak, the more ammunition you hand over to those who never cared to understand you in the first place. That's why restraint is power. Silence is strategy. Mystery is gravity. It pulls people in, not because you're trying to be interesting, but because you don't need to be understood to be respected. So from now on, you speak less. but everything you say carries weight. You show up less, but every appearance leaves impact. You respond slower, but every response is deliberate. Your silence is no longer a gap in communication. It's a boundary. Your mystery is no longer a byproduct of pain. It's a tool. Your restraint is no longer weakness. It's a signal that your peace is no longer up for negotiation. Let them wonder what you're thinking. Let them feel the tension of your pause. Let them sit in the discomfort of your absence. Because when you stop being readable, you start being respected. And when they don't know what moves you, they can no longer move you. Not every truth should be told. Honesty without strategy is a trap. You've been taught since childhood that emotional honesty is a virtue, that expressing how you feel raw and unfiltered is a sign of strength, that if you open up, people will understand you, love you, respect you more. But somewhere along the way, you learned the truth the hard way. Emotional honesty without timing, context, or boundaries is not strength, it's exposure. You thought speaking from the heart would earn you connection, but instead it often earned you distance. You thought confessing your struggles would invite compassion, but sometimes it invited manipulation. You thought opening up made you authentic, but in the wrong hands it made you vulnerable. Because the world doesn't just hear what you say, it calculates what it can use. That's the brutal truth no one tells you. When you confess your insecurities too soon, people don't always empathize, they sometimes memorize. They remember where your emotional cracks are, and later they press on them when it benefits them. They use your honesty to build their power over you, not to build trust with you. That doesn't mean you should never be real. It means you must be wise about who earns your reality. Honesty isn't about telling everyone everything. It's about knowing what to say, when to say it, and who's truly safe to hear it. It's not about bleeding in front of the world. It's about recognizing that your truth is sacred, not public property. People say vulnerability is power. And that's true, but only when you're the one holding the weapon. If you're vulnerable in a room full of people who see your pain as weakness, that's not power, that's submission. And Machiavelli understood this. He never said, "Don't feel." He said, "Don't reveal unless it serves a purpose." That's the difference between being emotional and being emotionally strategic. You can care, you can love, you can feel deeply, but you don't have to hand that truth to everyone you meet, especially not before they've earned it. Timing matters. Discretion matters. Protection matters. Because your emotions, your fears, your hopes, your desires are not free samples. They are earned access. They are private territory. And the moment you hand them out to anyone who offers attention, you lose control over your own narrative. This is where emotional discipline begins, not by shutting down, but by rising up into clarity, into boundaries, into strategic self-expression. You don't stop being honest, you start being precise. You don't stop feeling, you start filtering. You don't stop sharing, you start selecting. Let your story be sacred. Let your emotions be currency. And only trade them with those who bring value in return. Not empty validation. Not momentary attention, but real respect. So from now on, don't confuse emotional urgency with emotional maturity. Just because you feel something strongly doesn't mean you have to say it out loud. Power is the ability to hold space for your truth without needing the world to approve of it. And when you speak not to be understood, but to be undeniable. Because the deepest form of confidence is this: knowing your truth, feeling it fully, and still choosing when to reveal it. That's not suppression, that's sovereignty. The 6 mistakes that quietly steal your power. Power isn't always lost in a dramatic fall. Sometimes it's surrendered in silence, slowly, unconsciously, and with the best intentions. You don't feel it happening. You're not even aware. But day by day, word by word, you give little pieces of yourself away. And by the time you wake up to it, your boundaries are gone, your energy is drained, and the respect you thought you were building has quietly vanished. There are 6 common mistakes that silently destroy your power, and chances are you've made at least one of them. Mistake 1. Loving to fix dysfunction. You thought love could heal them. You thought if you stayed long enough, supported, hard enough, endured more than anyone else would, they'd change. But they didn't. They just took advantage of your loyalty. Because some people don't want to be healed. They want to be enabled. You weren't showing strength. You were showing availability. And they used it. True love doesn't sacrifice your sanity. Stop loving harder. Start leaving sooner. Mistake 2. Over-explaining your worth. You kept trying to make them see you, to explain what you bring to the table, to prove you're different, valuable, irreplaceable. But here's the Machiavellian truth: power doesn't explain, it exists. And the more you explain, the less they listen. The more you justify, the more they question. If they don't see your value in your silence, they won't respect it in your words. You're not a salesman. Stop pitching. Start observing. Mistake 3. Waiting for closure from the one who hurt you. You wanted an apology, a conversation, a confession. But the ones who break you rarely give you the clarity you're waiting for. Not because they forgot, but because they don't care. And every moment you spend waiting for closure is another moment you stay chained to their silence. You don't need closure. You need discipline. Close the door yourself. Mistake 4. Confusing presence with peace. You stayed. You endured. You told yourself staying meant strength. But what you were really doing was tolerating slow destruction. That wasn't love, it was self-abandonment. That wasn't peace, it was fear in disguise. Being strong doesn't mean you suffer longer. It means you protect your peace, even if it costs you the connection. Mistake 5. Making excuses for disrespect. They had a rough day. They didn't mean it. They're under pressure. You kept rewriting their disrespect to protect their image while your self-respect crumbled underneath. But here's the harsh truth. People who hurt you repeatedly know what they're doing. They just count on your forgiveness being automatic. Make them wrong. Stop tolerating it. Mistake 6. Thinking emotional honesty is always strength. You were told to be vulnerable, to be open, to share. But you shared before they earned your truth. You revealed your depth before they proved they could hold it. Vulnerability isn't power when it's poured out for everyone. It's power when it's reserved, filtered, and used with intention. Don't bleed before those who wouldn't stop the wound. Honesty without strategy is ammunition in the wrong hands. Each of these mistakes comes from a good place: love, hope, loyalty. But good intentions without boundaries don't make you noble, they make you a target. These aren't flaws, they're lessons. But only if you're willing to learn them. From now on, your power isn't something you perform, it's something you protect. Because silence isn't weakness, distance isn't cruelty, and walking away isn't failure. It's what real power looks like when you finally realize what you deserve. Real power begins where you end. Access. You don't lose power in one big moment. You lose it in the quiet spaces when you say yes out of guilt, when you reply out of fear, when you stay connected to people who disrespect you because you're afraid of being alone. It doesn't feel like surrender. It feels like compromise. But over time, every compromise without a boundary becomes a leak in your sovereignty. Here's the truth. People don't respect what's always available. They don't value what they didn't earn. And they won't protect what they never had to fight for. That's why real power begins with boundaries. Not walls built out of fear, but lines drawn with clarity. When you don't set boundaries, people assume you have none. When you're always accessible, they assume your energy is limitless. When you respond to every call, every text, every crisis, they stop seeing you as a person and start seeing you as a resource. And resources get used. You become the emotional vending machine. Press a button, get comfort. Press again, get advice. Press harder, get forgiveness. But when you finally stop dispensing, they call you distant, cold, selfish. Let them. Because the moment they stop having access to you is the moment they start realizing what you are actually worth. Boundaries are not about pushing people away. They're about pulling your power back. They're how you train the world to treat you, not through anger or revenge, but through intentional silence and selective availability. You don't have to explain your absence. You don't have to justify your space. You don't owe anyone access to your time, your mind, or your emotional energy, especially not those who took it for granted when you offered it freely. And this is where most people get it wrong. They believe being nice means being available, that being generous means being reachable, that being loving means being boundaryless. But Machiavellian wisdom flips that on its head. True power is not in how much you give. It's in how much you control what you give and to whom. Your presence should feel earned. Your attention should be precious. Your silence should carry weight. Because when you give yourself away too easily, you teach the world that you are cheap. Not because you are, but because you didn't charge anything for your energy. You don't need to make announcements. You don't need to draw red lines in public. You don't need to scream, "I'm done." You simply withdraw. Quietly, strategically, without emotion, without drama. The people who value you will adjust. The people who never did will reveal themselves in your absence. And that's the gift of boundaries. They don't just protect your peace, they expose your circle. So from now on, stop negotiating your worth with people who refuse to honor it. Stop begging for respect from those who benefit from your lack of it. Stop explaining your standards to people who live without them. You are not responsible for how they feel about your boundaries. You are responsible for enforcing them. Because power doesn't come from being everything to everyone. It comes from being unavailable to anything that costs you your self-respect. And when you protect your time like a fortress, when you guard your emotions like currency, when you say no, not with guilt, but with clarity, that's when the world starts to understand something deeper. You were never too much. You were just never protected enough. Now you are. Emotional sovereignty, the quietest form of dominance. You don't need to be the loudest in the room to be the most powerful. You don't need to control people to be in control. And you definitely don't need to suppress your emotions to master them. Because the highest form of dominance in today's world isn't physical or verbal, it's emotional sovereignty. What is emotional sovereignty? It's the ability to feel everything and reveal nothing, to care deeply and chase no one, to experience hurt, but never let it leak into your posture, your words, or your presence. This isn't about pretending. It's about protecting. It's about building an inner world so grounded, so complete, so self-sustaining that nothing outside of you can disrupt it. Most people live in emotional slavery. They're puppets to every insult, every comment, every rejection. One bad text ruins their whole day. One cold look makes them spiral. One moment of silence from someone they crave and they unravel completely. That's not love. That's dependency. That's not connection. That's control. And the moment someone can control your emotions, they control your reality. But when you become emotionally sovereign, when you learn to hold space for your feelings without bleeding them out, the entire dynamic shifts. You're no longer the reactive one. You're no longer the one explaining, defending, apologizing for having a heart. You become the observer, the one who sees, clearly moves slowly, and chooses whether or not to respond. That's real dominance. It's not about being numb. It's about being deliberate. It's not about hiding how you feel. It's about learning when your feelings serve you and when they sabotage you. Machiavelli never said to kill your emotion. He simply said to never expose it unless it gives you advantage. And in today's hyper-reactive world where people broadcast their every thought, every trigger, every insecurity, power belongs to the one who says less and means more. Think about it. When everyone else is triggered, emotional posting, explaining, reacting, the one who stays calm becomes the center of gravity. The one who doesn't flinch becomes the one they fear losing. The one who walks away without drama becomes the one they obsess over. That's emotional sovereignty. That's the new dominance. You don't scream to prove control. You don't beg to be understood. You don't fight to be chosen. You stand still with eyes that see everything and a voice that only speaks when silence has lost its power. And when they can't read you, they begin to respect you. When they can't manipulate your mood, they begin to second-guess their own. When you no longer react, you force them to confront their own reflection in your calm. So from this point forward, you don't just protect your peace, you embody it. You don't chase closure. You create distance. You don't panic when people pull away. You watch, you wait, you decide. Because the goal is no longer to be liked by everyone, it's to be moved by no one. You can love and still let go. You can feel and still stay silent. You can care and still choose yourself. That's not cold. That's not cruel. That's power under control. That's emotional sovereignty. And in this world, nothing commands more gravity than a person who feels deeply, but never needs permission to stand alone. True dominance begins within, not over others, but over yourself. The world teaches dominance the wrong way. It shows you loud men shouting for attention, aggressive moves, sharp words, overcompensation, masked as confidence. We're told that if we can control others, we win. But real dominance isn't about commanding the world. It's about commanding yourself in the face of it. Self-control, that's the final frontier. Because until you learn to master your tone, your thoughts, your reactions, you're not in control. You're just impulsive in a suit. Anyone can raise their voice. Anyone can demand obedience. But only a truly dominant man or woman can sit in chaos and remain unmoved. That's the power Machiavelli pointed to, not brute strength, but calm authority that makes others hesitate without saying a word. You don't need to dominate people. You need to dominate your emotions. You need to be the one who doesn't flinch, doesn't chase, doesn't panic. Because when you are in full control of yourself, you instantly shift the energy of any room you walk into. You don't beg to be heard. Silence becomes your gravity. You don't explain your presence. Your posture speaks for itself. You don't chase approval. Your detachment forces others to seek it from you. This doesn't mean you're disconnected or numb. It means you've done the internal work. You've stared your insecurities in the eye, bled in silence, lost people you cared about, and came back unshaken. Not because you don't feel, but because your feelings no longer drive your behavior. You've felt the sting of disrespect and chose not to react. You've felt the urge to explain yourself and said nothing. You've felt the bait of chaos and remained still. That's dominance, not over them, over you. Because here's the truth they don't teach you. If you can't control yourself, someone else will. Your reactions, your access, your attention, they all become tools in someone else's hands the moment you fail to protect them. And people who study behavior, they can spot weakness, not physical weakness, but emotional exposure, the overtalker, the oversharer, the overreactor, all easy to manipulate, all easy to dismiss. But the one who watches silently, the one who speaks with restraint, the one who doesn't flinch when tested, that's the one they can't play. That's the one they start to fear. Not because he's dangerous, but because he chooses when and where to be. Because he controls his own script, while everyone else scrambles for a line. So from now on, you're no longer in the game of dominating others. You're in the art of leading yourself. No more chasing, no more explaining, no more giving energy away without a return. You control what you say, what you feel, what you give, and most importantly, what you allow. Because when you own yourself completely, no one else can. That is real power. That is real dominance. Not a performance, not noise, but a man or woman who stands tall, unmoved, and unapologetically in command of who they are. And once you master that, you'll realize you never needed to dominate anyone, because everyone else was already following your silence. The quiet shift that changes everything. In a world driven by noise, performance, and constant validation, the most powerful shift you can make is internal. The message is simple, but life-altering. You don't need to be louder. You need to be harder to read. You don't need to be more giving. You need to be more selective. This isn't about becoming cold or bitter. It's about reclaiming control over your energy, your emotions, and your presence. Because if you don't set boundaries, the world will set them for you, and you will always lose. People chase what they can't predict. They respect what they can't access easily. They value what they have to earn. Start with silence. Not the kind that comes from fear, but the kind that signals composure. Let people feel your distance. Let your restraint speak louder than explanation. When you no longer react to disrespect, you reclaim power without ever raising your voice. Make your attention expensive. Make your presence intentional. Make your emotional world something sacred, not something to be handed out to whoever shows interest. You don't need to convince people to respect you. You need to respect yourself so completely that others can feel it without a word. This is emotional sovereignty, the quiet confidence that moves differently. And once you build it, you'll notice something. You don't have to chase anyone. You don't have to argue to be understood. You don't have to prove your worth. You just exist, unreadable, unshakable, and unforgettable. Because in a world that tries to own your mind, your heart, and your time, the one who controls himself controls everything.